Now, according to the rules that we currently will be faced with come Thursday, public services will remain open. Job centres will continue to help people find work. Good luck with that. Courts and registry offices will continue to operate. Food banks, blood donation services will continue to operate as well. And Alcoholics Anonymous and various other bereavement services and various other consultation groups for mental health will continue to remain open as long as they don't have more than 15 people per session. It's a very complicated sort of series of things going on. Schools for the moment also remain open, but there are also rumours that many teaching unions are going to try and shut schools down. I had a message over the weekend from a listener whose son's school has been shut this week. It's instead of going back after half term, it's been shut for a couple of weeks because of some COVID cases. It's in the southeast of England. I'm not going to name it, but he has had a conversation with both the headmaster and his MP about it all. Let's talk to Calvin Robinson now, himself a former educator, now studying for all sorts of further qualifications. Calvin, a very good afternoon to you. Welcome.
Mike, good to hear from you. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well indeed. You know what? I was fascinated yesterday when it was pointed out to me, and I can't remember who pointed it out to me, but the teachers' union, which is currently calling for schools to be locked down, is claiming that thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people have signed a petition to do so, right? But interestingly, many of the people who have signed a petition are not actually teachers because they've opened the petition up to concerned individuals, as well as, you know, all manner of activists and sort of union workers.
Quite crafty, isn't it?
It is rather crafty, yeah.
A union survey that's not actually surveying their members.
No. I mean, basically what they're doing is going around to their mates' houses and saying, will you sign this?
That's pretty much what they're doing to get the message across that they want to portray. And again, every time we talk about this, we always see the unions are doing the same thing. It's anti-government for the sake of being anti-government. They're too political. Yeah. They're not looking after their members.
And also, as it's also been pointed out to me, there are hundreds of thousands of teachers in this country, most of whom are not in this particular union.
Right. So the majority of teachers aren't in favour of this. At least the majority of teachers haven't signed this survey in favour of further lockdowns. And most people I'm talking to are saying, look, we need to keep kids in schools. And that's because we've seen the effect of the first lockdown. We can't have that again. Young people they were out of school for a third of a school year, but actually the results have shown that they're 22 months behind now.
Yeah.
So it's been so detrimental to their learning. We can't put them through it.
Well, of course. And I've got two teenage children, as I've probably told you before. You know, they literally did nothing for about 6 months because one of them was due to take GCSEs, which never happened. So there was no work that he could be given before going off to FE college to do his A-levels, which is where he is now. And the younger one just was given homework if he wanted to do it. I mean, that was the kind of the rule of thumb. So, of course, he did some of it, but he didn't do much of it.
Yeah, and at the time when we talked last, it was all anecdotal, so I was just speaking to other teachers. But we've got actual research behind this now that shows at least 1 in 5 children have no contact, no schoolwork, no support or anything at all. That's too much to leave children behind, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what we're also seeing is the disadvantaged children that are getting left behind. That gap is widening now. You know, private schools are putting a lot better resources than the state schools in the disadvantaged areas, and that's not okay.
No, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, I do think and hope that if there was to be a shutdown of some schools, and as I say, there are some schools that have shut because of COVID, one way or another, rightly or wrongly, that they are better. They're going to be better at it this time because they're going to be more prepared. I mean, Google Classroom, for example, is something that my son's school has now signed up to. So I think they might be better at setting homework and making it more like a virtual classroom situation.
Exactly that. So a lot of the consultancy I did over the summer was setting up Google Classroom in schools. So they had a way of delivering content, which is why I don't get the union's argument that we need to shut schools down to prepare them for what? We've had the whole summer holiday to prepare for this. We know what we're doing now.
Right.
We should do.
Exactly. And I mean, it certainly doesn't seem to be wrong that basically, certainly anyone under 15 is not really in any danger from this particular virus. Yes, they can get it. Yes, they can pass it on. And I suppose there will be those who would say, well, we need to lock the schools down because otherwise it's not a proper lockdown.
Well, this is the thing as well. We've got the chief medical officer, we've got the chief scientific officer, we've got the government, we've got the opposition all saying that schools should remain open. Why is Mary Bousted, why is the National Education Union saying otherwise? What do they know that everyone else doesn't? We've got the top medical experts in the country, if not the world, saying that the risk is manageable and that schools should stay open.
I mean, curiously, it's the one area where the government is actually taking account of the mental health of the children and the people who will be mostly affected by a lockdown. Whereas they're not taking account of the mental health of small business owners, they're not taking account of the well-being and the mental health of the elderly who are not allowed to see anyone, they're locked away, they can't see their families. It's a strange disconnect for me.
It is. And, I'm not the government's biggest supporter at the moment, but they have made resources available for schools. They've opened up an extra £1 billion on top of what they've already put together, so that we can have catch-up provisions. They are providing resources for children in disadvantaged areas, etc. So the support is there. The guidance is there. Schools have the autonomy to get on with things and change practices and put new hygiene measures in place. I don't see any reason not to open them other than to make a political point.
Absolutely right. And parents, of course, will know that the last thing they need is more children of their own running about the house while they're trying to go out to work, because a lot of people would have to then take time off work, which they may not be able to do. And again, at the risk of repeating myself, it's the less well-off who suffer most here, isn't it? It's the less well-off who are stuck in small apartments, small flats, small houses, maybe with quite a lot of children around. The last thing they need is another 4-week lockdown.
Well, this is a point I made to Mary yesterday, in that she's one of the highest paid public sector union bosses in the country. So it's okay for her to take time off. It's okay for her not to go into work and do things. But it's not the same situation for millions of people all around the country. We're not all that privileged, unfortunately.
No, sadly, that's true. And I mean, as far as your belief of how this will go, we're hearing a lot of sounds at the moment that as with all things the government does, it changes, and it may change between now and the end of this week, or it may change between now and the end of the month. What do you think would push them towards closing schools?
I think if the pressure continues from what they perceive to be teachers to close schools, then they'll buckle. But what we've got to tell the government is this union doesn't speak for teachers anymore. They are a political force, and we have to stand up as teachers and say, actually, we want to keep educating children. We don't want to interrupt their lives and their futures any longer. We need them to be in the classroom. That's the best place for them, for their mental health, for their education, and for their well-being.
And I mean, we're already being told that there might well be delays to the exams next year, that they may not be able to take their A-levels and their GCSEs at the time when they were supposed to anyway.
Which would be a massive balls up. Yeah. Look at what happened this year. It was the biggest mistake we've seen in education in at least a decade. We can't do that all over again. We have to put measures in place to make sure exams are socially distanced, as they always are, and get kids in there to prove that all the studying they've done so far, and to put it all into practice and give them an opportunity to succeed. We can't take that away from them again. We can't delay it, and we can't cancel it.
No. What are you making of what's going on in the universities of this country? Because they've been accused of kind of basically money grabbing by demanding the students come and stay in the halls of residence when it probably wasn't the wisest decision they should have made. It's a lot of students now getting the blame from politicians for partying too hard and for disobeying the rules and all sorts of things like that. I mean, would it make more sense maybe to lock them down?
Well, I think they're a bit of a scapegoat. I think the government isn't taking any blame for the situation from lockdown or post-lockdown, and they're pushing it all onto young people. It's easy to say, oh, yeah, those young people are doing what young people do, and people are getting on board with this, which is what surprises me. What we should be saying is, actually, this is the government's response. The mental health crisis in this country is down to the government's lockdown schemes, and the spread of the virus is due to these measures not working. Let's not blame young people, whether at university or not, otherwise, and let's blame the government, as we rightly should.
Yes, but of course, many of the figures that the government are looking at, and Andrew Bridgen mentioned this earlier when I spoke to him, is a lot of the steep rise in infection rates is between the ages of sort of 18 and 24. So, while those people may not be terribly adversely affected by the infections, they're the cause of a lot of the spikes.
So we need to put different measures in place to manage that. And I'm not sure locking people away in the universities is the case. As you know, I'm studying at the moment. I'm in my university, in my college room at the moment. This is not a place I want to be stuck for a long period of time. I will go insane.
Yes, I think that's very true. But there will be people now from Thursday on who will be probably stuck in rooms even smaller than that.
Absolutely, and it can't be okay. We've seen London Ambulance Service said that we've seen a 70% rise in attempted suicides since the lockdown. We've got to consider the mental health implications, and I don't think the Prime Minister's doing that. I haven't heard him mention the word mental health more than once over the last few months. No. It's not okay to put such draconian measures in place and not consider the consequences of those actions.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, there's no question that he's talked about it in the past, and he's talked about how nobody wants to do this, and he's always reluctantly doing things, and he wishes he didn't have to do them. But I think he could be a little bit more robust with some of the scientists to say, well, you know, it's all very well saving these lives over here, but over there, there's something else going on.
That's it, though, isn't it, Mike? It's an exchange of lives for lives. We've all seen that video of that 104-year-old woman just begging to see her family locked away in that care home, and it's just not right. How can we say we are going to protect your life at any cost? You know, you will live forever, but you won't see your loved ones, you won't have a life, but you will live forever. That's not what a lot of people want. You know, give people agency over their own lives, give them freedom, let us make responsible choices ourselves. Don't lock us down and tell us what to do with our lives. What's the point?
No, quite. And as far as your situation is concerned, Calvin, what will affect you on Thursday? What will happen?
Well, it looks like I'm spending half term here in my college room, and I hope I won't be locked in here for the entirety of the month. I hope there's some way to escape. With restaurants and things being closed as well, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So I'm sure my mental health will be implicated in this. I'm already going insane at the thought of it.
Yeah, I know. I can imagine. Well, listen, hang in there. You can always call the show if you need somebody to talk to. But listen, we'll talk to you very soon. Calvin, thanks very much indeed. Calvin Robinson there, who is education consultant, former assistant principal himself, an educationalist who knows the absolute value of keeping children in schools, who knows that the school should remain open, despite what one teaching union thinks. And what's interesting about it, right, is that actually an awful lot of the people signing their petition to close schools down, which the last time I looked was around about between 80 and 100,000 signatures, basically, they're not actually, many of them, not teachers at all. Some of them are parents, some of them are interested adults. So I don't know what that means. Some of them are activists, obviously, who are just trying to make a political point. But if you've got a school that you want to give me some information about, because as I said, I've already had a couple of tweets from people who said that their schools where their kids go have been shut down because of COVID. A dozen or so teachers supposedly being infected, some children being infected as well. But it's very important, it seems to me, to keep the schools open at all costs.